Dear colleagues, my name is Paulen, and I'm very happy to welcome you to my presentation on set membership estimation using ellipsoidal ensembles. This work is a result of cooperation of Slovak University of Technology in Bratislava and Shanghai Tech University. In this talk, we look at the set membership estimation, which is a viable alternative to statistical estimation, where one does not require knowledge of underlying probability distribution. As the name suggests, our target is to characterize an estimation solution set. This set is usually given by a bunch of nonlinear inequalities, which might involve nonlinear process dynamics. An efficient set membership estimation requires the use of set-based methods as we resort to characterize an outer approximation of the target set. Albeit efficient and valid, such outer approximation might be a loose representation of a target set. In this talk, we present a novel tool that is based on over-approximation of the solution set using ellipsoidal ensembles. The main advantage of this method is that we can use it for joint parameter and state estimation of general nonlinear dynamic systems, and as we will see, this method enables online estimation. Before talking about ellipsoidal ensembles, let us recall the problem of set membership estimation in more detail. Imagine that we have a model at hand and we want to estimate some of its parameters as well as its states. Note that if we represent state estimation as estimation of states' initial conditions, we can use variable p to represent the unknowns of our estimation problem. We will also generally assume that our output function is a general nonlinear function of states and parameters. After measuring the outputs, denoted as y, that we assume to contain some bounded noise, we can, as in standard estimation, infer a particular point in parameter space and a particular value of initial condition that, when plugged into the model, would best describe the observed measurements in some sense. With information about the bounds on the measurement noise, we can perform set membership estimation, which seeks a set of parameter values that result in predictions that explain the measurement data up to the precision defined by the measurement error bounds. Now let us imagine that we would like to perform the estimation online. We would need a method to propagate the uncertainty in the parameters through the dynamic system, and we would need a method to intersect the propagated state information with the information obtained by the measurements. Let us first start with the problem of set propagation, which amounts to finding a reachable set of a parametric ordinary differential equation. That is, the set that, given the values of parameters in some set P, contains all the corresponding state trajectories. Naturally, for a general nonlinear dynamic system, this set is hard to characterize exactly, and we resort to finding an outer approximation X hat. One of the possibilities here is to construct an ellipsoidal tube that is guaranteed to contain the reachable set. Thus, our set propagation is parameterized using a so-called central trajectory of the states Q and the pointwise in time shaping metrics of the ellipsoid denoted as capital Q. The main theoretical results are summarized on this slide, and the details can be found in our paper. The first idea is to realize that we can project each measurement information onto the state space and over-approximate it using an ellipsoid. All the tricks from standard estimation are available here, such as creating dummy state variables to represent parameters or using degenerate ellipsoids to represent linear strips. The second idea follows as a consequence of the recent work of the co-authors of this paper on reachable sets for differential games. This piece allows us to propagate the obtained ellipsoidal ensemble such that all the ellipsoids will contract with respect to each other. I leave the technical details for the paper, but I will just mention that this can be formulated as a set propagation very similar to the reachable set outer approximation as I sketched on the previous slide. Finally, this estimation represents joint set propagation and set intersection and can be formulated as a dynamic optimization problem. The optimization problem originates here quite naturally, as there exist several ellipsoids that would contain an intersection of the ellipsoidal ensemble, like the one on like the one in blue on the picture. We would naturally like to find the one which minimizes the volume of the overall optimization of the intersection, and that's why we use optimization, which can be even formulated as a nonlinear programming problem. As the runtime of our process at hand might progress, more and more tubes can be added to the picture, and computational efficient estimation would thus require a selection process of measurement tubes. I will comment more on this later when presenting the results of the case study. Let me now talk briefly about the demonstration of the presented technique. We studied a real application of a membrane process that we use in our lab. The goal of the membrane filtration is to process a batch from initial state with low concentration of products and relatively high concentration of impurities to the final state where the concentration of the products is increased and the concentration of impurities is relatively low. A scheme of this process is presented here. The treated solution is driven from the feed tank to the membrane module. And here it is divided into two streams. One stream contains only the impurities and leaves the system as a permeate. Another stream is fed back into the tank. The flow rate of the permeate stream characterizes the separation efficiency of the membrane and usually represents a nonlinear relation between physical and operational parameters, such as, for example, mass transfer coefficient, and the concentrations of the dissolved species that represent states of the underlying dynamic model. This property already suggests that for a successful and even optimal control, one would need a reliable parameter and state estimation. The manipulation of this process is realized via an adjustment of the flow rate of fresh, clean water into the process, into the feeding tank. As I already mentioned, we ran this experiment in our lab on the experimental setup that is shown here in the picture. When talking about optimality of the batch, this can be nicely represented in the concentration diagram, where our goal is to drive the initial state of the process into the final one. Where the batch is stopped. Thanks to the degree of freedom in our manipulated variable, this operation can be realized in several ways, of which only one would be optimal. The optimal path is, in this case, is represented by a minimum energy consumption during the batch. In our previous work, We have identified the optimal control as switching state and parameter-dependent control law analytically through Pontryagin minimum principle. For this process, all the states are the measurable outputs. From the time when we derived the optimal control law, we have conducted several experiments using this kind of setup, which showed that the optimal batch is reachable and significantly profitable. Yet we require a reliable online parameter and state estimation. The reason for the requirement of online estimation of parameters is given in these pictures. We observe significant batch-to-batch variations due to fouling phenomenon occurring at the membrane. In our further works, we have found and theoretically confirmed that a reliable estimation, for example, realized via set membership estimation, would represent a real asset in the optimal control of the process. We have tested the presented set membership estimation methodology under quite realistic conditions similar to our lab. We perform measurements each second, and since our analytical control law initializes our manipulated variable at its constraint, we usually do not require an accurate parameter or state estimation until around 500 seconds of the batch run. As we have mentioned before, the selection of the n number of tubes in the ellipsoidal ensemble is a trade-off between accuracy and complexity of the estimation. We have implemented the set membership estimation using ellipsoidal ensembles using Casadi and MATLAB on a standard desktop PC. We have attempted neither parallelization nor optimization of the code. We first study the case where we use only 2 tubes for the ellipsoidal ensemble, and we mimic thus the recursive estimation setup, where we include at each sampling instant the newly obtained information from the measurement as a new ellipsoidal tube into the ensemble, and we discard the measurement information propagated from the past. As we can see, the average computational time per sampling instant is favorable, but this cannot be said about the estimation accuracy measured by the volume of the intersection of the ellipsoidal ensemble. The rate of estimation convergence is simply too slow. We introduce here a simple selection of measurement tubes to be included in the ensemble. We decide whether to keep and use the past information or whether to replace it with the newly obtained measurement. This selection is based on the volume of intersection of the measurement ellipsoids and goes in line with our overall estimation goal. This also creates an efficient moving horizon-like scheme where we include the most informative measurements from the entire past of the process. We can observe here a dramatic increase in the estimation convergence rate, yet no increase in the computational burden. We can even better see this in the zoomed picture, where we also test our strategy against the increased number of tubes in the ellipsoidal ensemble. We can conclude the expected. With the increase in the number of measurement tubes, the accuracy of the estimation increases, but the estimation gets more and more complex. The complexity growth does not seem to be too dramatic and certainly feasible for small to medium scale applications. Yet there is still room for the improvement in terms of numerics, which we haven't investigated yet, and it will be an interesting topic for the future work. The performance curves presented here actually show average performance in the presented scenarios, as we have studied several runs of the estimation under different noise realizations. In all cases, we observe a consistent estimation performance that results in a high-quality estimate well before this information is required by the optimal control law of the membrane plant. We can also observe the estimation performance in terms of measured states, which consistently show gradual estimation convergence, not only in terms of point estimate, shown in the dashed line, but also in convergence of the bounds of the estimate, which, as expected, are guaranteed to include the true state. Dear colleagues, let me conclude here. We presented a novel approach for joint state and parameter set membership estimation. This technique is applicable for general nonlinear systems. It allows for online applications on set membership estimation, and in this moment, it is real-time feasible for moderate scale systems. It is also possible to perform an efficient moving horizon-like estimation, which proved in our applications to give extremely satisfactory results. Our future work lies in improving the numerics of the scheme and increasing the range of applicability regarding the problem size. This is all from my side. I'm looking forward to your questions, either through the channels available at this conference or whenever via an email. Thank you for your attention.